Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're happy to have you with us today. My name is Carrie Ferg, and I'm your host for Manta's Small Business Expert Series about business planning. Manta wants to thank Alex Genadinik for generously donating his time and expertise on the subject, and thank you to Avalara for sponsoring this event. We hope you'll tweet about today's event using hashtag MantaExperts. We'll start with an intro from Manta's Vice President of Marketing, Sarah Ophurst.
Thanks, Carrie. Experts vary on the approach they recommend for business planning. Methods range from formal and detailed to minimalist and informal. But one thing is certain. It's difficult to know where you're going if you don't have a roadmap. Today, our guest expert is going to cover why business planning is important and give you some practical examples. So with a little time and focus, you can easily implement a business plan for your small business. It would be difficult to overplan as a small business owner, but remember, even when you have your plan, it's important to stay flexible. Now back to Carrie.
Thanks, Sarah. During the webinar, you should see a slide area, which will allow you to view the webinar. On top of the slide area are 3 tabs: Ask a Question, Attachments, and Rate This. Click on Attachments to view articles and links related to small business planning, and Rate This to give us your feedback. Click on the Ask a Question tab to ask a question anytime during the webinar. We'll do our best to respond during Q&A at the end of the event. If you're having technical difficulties, please email webinarhelp@manta.com. My colleague Graham is answering your technical questions, so just send him a note. Now I'd like to introduce Graham, our community manager.
Hello everyone, my name is Graham and I'm the community manager here at Manta. I'll be helping with questions today. I know you'll have a lot of questions about our content once we get going, so ask them anytime. Just click on the Q&A tab and type in your answer, your question, and I'll push this along to Carrie and our expert. Carrie and Alex will be answering questions during the last 15 minutes of the webinar, but please ask them as soon as you think of them. Just one quick shameless plug. Come on over to the community after the webinar. It's a great resource to ask questions and get answers from your peers who may have already tackled the same problem. All right, thanks a lot, guys, and back to Carrie.
Thanks, Graham. I'm excited to introduce our guest today, Alex Genadinik. Alex Genadinik is a software engineer and an entrepreneur. He is a 3-time Amazon bestselling author, creator of some of the top mobile apps for entrepreneurs with over 1 million downloads, and a prolific online instructor with over 70 online courses and 50,000 students. Alex specializes in business planning, business strategy, and scalable marketing techniques. Alex is passionate about helping entrepreneurs achieve success, and that is why he devotes his main area of focus on helping people get successfully started and carry that momentum forward in their business. Here's what we have planned today. First, Alex is going to discuss the definition of a business plan. Then he'll cover when you should write a business plan and the difference between a business plan and a business model. Next, he'll move on to what makes for a good plan and each of the essential components you should include. Ask your questions using the Ask a Question field anytime during the webinar, and we'll do our best to answer them the last 15 minutes. I'd like to start with a quick story. A recent Manta survey revealed that just 54% of small business owners actually have business plans, and only 41% have performed market research. Just 19% of small business owners surveyed have actually performed competitive benchmarking. So that means at a minimum, 46% of small business owners are shooting from the hip without a plan or guideline in place. Like Benjamin Franklin said, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Today, Alex is going to address why it's important for the growth and success of your business to have a plan in place and how to do it. So with that being said, let's get down to business. Alex, business plan is a commonly used phrase that's been around for a long time. But let's talk big picture for a second. What is a business plan exactly?
Hi, and by the way, thank you for having me on, and thank you, Carrie and Sarah and Graham, for all the hard work that you do putting this together.
Welcome.
And well, a business plan, I think people get caught up and they think it's a very formal document that it has, that they have to, dot the I's and cross the T's. But that's the case for very few people. But for all entrepreneurs, there's this essential business planning process where they really, just like you mentioned a minute earlier, they really have to create a really viable plan of action for their business. And that's the case for everyone. Like every business needs that. So, there's a couple of ways to look at business planning. Some people can look at the very, formal business plan writing, and we'll talk about that in this presentation. But I really want to kind of quell this confusion that there's, people just think that's business planning. It's a big formal document, it has to be very long. But for most people, that's not the case. For most small business owners, it's really about just making sure that they have a very viable strategy, like a plan of action and the steps that they will take to grow their business. Almost like an end of, a light at the end of the tunnel for them. Because if they don't have this, and if they kind of just, pummel right into starting their business, they're going to encounter all the issues like that they would have seen during the business planning phases. That during the business planning phases, it's really easy to find problems, find issues, and solve them. It's really cheap because it's just theory. But once you started, these things become much more expensive to solve and overcome. So really, business planning is all about just having a really solid strategy for your business that you can then go and easily execute, one step after another.
Thanks, Alex. There are different schools of thoughts on business plans and how essential they are, which you already alluded to. What do you think? When should a potential or existing small business owner write a business plan?
Right. So many people, when they come to me, they think that they're going to give it to somebody without already having someone already ask for it, right? So I kind of like to suggest that you should have a formal business plan if you have somebody that you want to work with or some organization that you want to work with that's asking for it. And that can be an investor, maybe a lender, a potential, business partner, or someone that you really want to work with. If that's what they require, then that's what they require. Then you must have one. But that happens somewhat rarely. But in all cases, I recommend that people at least do some planning of just. It does not have to end up being a formal document. I think like some people do that. The napkin business plan, right? That's like a common term. They should just have a clear, viable strategy before they start working on the actual business, right? And during the strategy, they need to find the potential pitfalls and the potential solutions or workarounds to those pitfalls, so that when they do start, it's smooth sailing as much as possible.
All right, thank you, Alex. You mentioned in your How to Write a Business Plan book that definitions of business models can be confusing and complex. Can you explain your definition of a business model and also how a business model is different from a business plan?
Sure. Yeah, the term business model gets used in a whole bunch of ways, often incorrectly, and often it's just too cumbersome of a term. Really, the way that I like to look at the term business model and explain it is really how all the parts of your business work together and how well they work together. So, for example, during the business planning, you are kind of figuring out your essential business model. So you're trying to evaluate, like, how is your product going to get built? How are you going to market that product? Is that going to be profitable? And the whole thing together. So all the little components, the way they play with each other, that's essentially your business model.
And what are the most important aspects of making sure your business plan is a good one?
Well, I think when people first start out planning, if they are first-time entrepreneurs, I think the very important thing is they don't have the kind of vision, the experience to fall back on for a frame of reference to tell if, like, their actual plan is good or not, right? Like when I was first starting as an entrepreneur, my plans always seemed good to me, right? Because they're my plans. And I didn't see what I was kind of like missing, right? And so what I suggest is that people get, advisors or mentors in the best case, they're sometimes expensive. So possibly people can join mastermind groups, which are typically cheaper, or at least get feedback from business peers and potential clients. So as many points of feedback that you can get will actually help to improve your business plan, because you're kind of going to be looking at it from many different angles. But if you can get like an advisor or a mentor that's created a successful business before, preferably in your business niche, that's probably an ideal approach to having a good plan and a good strategy. Because I think, just to emphasize, like people when they first start out, all their plans and strategies seem good to them because they just don't see where the pitfall might come. And it just takes somebody with experience to kind of notice it.
All right, thank you. That's helpful. So I'd like to remind everyone, if they have any questions for Alex, ask the question using the Ask a Question tab, and we'll try to get to them at the end of the webinar. Alex, now that you've covered the fundamentals of business planning, let's talk about how to write a business plan and what components are important to include. Starting with the executive summary. What is it and what should be included in it?
Yeah, sure. The executive summary, it's a term that's used in a couple of ways. In formal business plans, it's just like an introduction paragraph. Like in the longer sort of formal business plans, it's just an introduction paragraph, just kind of easing the reader into the document. So it's really, it's not the most important thing. It's just kind of like a glimpse of what they will get, a little bit of a synopsis of the whole thing. But the real details go after that. Also, of course, if you're writing, sometimes people call a like 1 or 2 page business plan. If you just have somebody who just wants the details, they sometimes call that an executive summary, which is a totally different thing, but it has the same term. So just wanted to make that distinction. But this is just basically to ease the person in.
Got it. So the next component you recommend to get included in business plans is an overview of product or service. Can you explain what it is and why it's important?
Sure. As whoever is reading your document, as they start to read it, they want to know, at first you want to give them as many frames of reference as possible, right? As many points of kind of reference as possible. You want to mention what your product is, how it helps people, what the benefit of the product is, things like that, just so that they understand, what the business is, And I think what you really want to do is be clear. Many people, they start to use like really overly complex language, and it just seems funny when it's read. Because when most people read a business plan, they kind of skim it. They're not going to focus on every detail. And they're just looking for clarity, short sentences, and for the product to be clear so that when they read the next sections, they understand how to apply what you're writing in the next sections to the product description. But if they don't understand the product really well, they're going to be confused, about the rest of the plan. And mind you that some businesses are really clear, like it's really clear what they do. But some businesses, especially like tech businesses, it's not always clear what exactly they are. So if your business is a little bit confusing, I think in all cases you want to just make sure there's clarity above everything else in that section.
It makes sense. So moving on to the third essential business plan element, why is it important to explain what stage your business is in?
It's another just, frame of reference, Like if I read something and if I read a business plan and like the person's going on about how incredible their business is and like this and that and, how they're going to be the best, I want to know, like, have you started? Or, maybe you started and you have like 1 million customers. So I would read the business plan completely different if the business is something that's just being planned, or if it's something that's in a certain advanced stage of the business, right? So it's just a frame of reference point. Again, it's a short thing. You don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but give some benchmarks, like some achievements. Like if you're planning, that's okay. If you have 1 million customers, that's okay. been in business for, how long, all these little details. So it's really just for the reader to understand like where you are in the process of starting.
All right. So moving on to the next component, and I just want to take a quick second to remind everyone if they have questions for Alex, feel free to submit them using the Ask a Question tab, and we'll try our best to get to them at the end of the webinar. So moving on to target market, how do you identify an audience? How broad is too broad? Is there such thing as too targeted of an audience?
So this is the first place, I think, in the business plan where, sort of like the rubber hits the road. Like the important stuff starts really here, in my opinion. And in my experience, when I first built my business planning apps, what I was first seeing is absolutely everyone was making very similar mistakes in this. And they were doing something like, my target market is everyone, or all women, or all men, or something like that, right? And so this is like, I was really surprised by how common this mistake was across the board. And so I kind of just started focusing on it more, just to make sure. I think, in my experience, whenever I thought, hey, my target market is such and such people, it was theory, and theory and assumptions, they have a tendency to often be wrong. And so my suggestion for anybody that's starting to like think about their target market and all that is not just to, you can think about it and stuff like that, but also really make sure, don't skip the step of seeking out the people who you think are like a part of your target market and actually engaging them in conversation. Because then you will understand their needs, and then out of that you will get a sense of kind of their habits, their daily life, and at which point they will engage or not engage with your product, right? Whether your product is appealing to them or not, or how your product can be adjusted to be appealing to them. And from that, you'll get a sense of like, out of all the people you thought were your target market, which are the sweet spot, right? And people usually focus on, there's demographics that go into a target market and psychographics. So demographics, they're things like, male or female, education level, where people live, are they married, do they have children, do they have cars? So all those kinds of like facts about people that can be measured. And so that's fine. But there is also this component of psychographics. So psychographics are, for example, like things you cannot really measure, but they still make a big difference. Like, for example, people's hopes and their needs and their dreams and, what they want in life, all that kind of stuff, right? People's characteristics that drive them towards one thing or another. And that's really important because you really want to get a deep understanding of the people you are selling to and the people, like what will make them engage with your product or not, like what motivates them. And out of that, of course, you will craft your sales pitch and your product. Did I answer that was a multi-part question. Did I answer everything?
Yep, I think you got it, Alex. Let's move on now to the target market size, which is the next component that you recommend including in a business plan. How do you identify for your prospective business, how specific and accurate does this need to get?
The target market itself, or the size, or?
Yeah, the target market size. So you sort of were talking about, the risk of going too broad and how this is a common mistake. But can you go too specific?
You could. So there's a very famous blog post by a very, very well-known investor, Mark Suster, and he put it really well. And it's a few years old already, but I still reference it. And it's called deer hunting. And it talks about how entrepreneurs, you can hunt elephants, deer, or rabbits. And by the way, for people in the audience, I love animals. I'm not a fan of hunting, but this is just an analogy. So and the idea is that if you hunt elephants, they're too big to kill. Like if you go after all everyone, right? It's too difficult. Like even if you're like, let's use the example of like the travel industry. Well, if you just you say, hey, I'm serving the travel industry. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Yeah, it is, but it's an elephant. As a new business on day one, you're just not going to win, right? On the other hand, like you suggested, if you narrow down too small, you're hunting little rabbits, right? You can kill it, but there's not enough meat there. And so there's got to be a sweet spot in every business. And this is part of the business's differentiation and the market segment that the business decides to target. And that's like the deer, right? It's not that hard to kill, but it has a lot of meat. And that's the idea of this deer hunting, very famous blog post. And so when a business is trying to figure out their differentiation within a market, and which customers they will target, how they will be, how they position their product, and some people call it finding their niche, I guess, within a market. So we can we can use the travel example. Like if you, let's say, want to just focus on travel within, let's say, San Francisco or New York, right? It's actually still, a big, I don't know what the size of the travel market is, right? But it still has to be segmented because, there's tour guides and there's like hotels and then there's like car rentals and all these things. So you kind of just have to keep on narrowing down until you start seeing like this is too little. Like, it's too little of a win, right? Let's say if you're doing New York, right? And if you ended up like going niching down enough and you're seeing that like the competition is too stiff all over New York, and so we have to like travel within Queens, Queens of New York, right? Well, that may be a little too narrow because nobody's traveling there, right? So at some point you just have to catch yourself and be like, okay, too narrow. On that point, in some industries, there is existing data out there and research on, total money spent, all that kind of stuff. For some industries, I don't know, let's say you want to start a bodega, like a corner store. Well, there's no research, there's no industry research on the market size of your particular corner in which you're going to start your store. So, there's a little bit of an art to it. You kind of have to approximate. If it's a local business, you have to approximate the size of the radius and the kind of people who live there, right? So the demographics. If they're affluent, you're going to sell one kind of product. If they're not affluent, you're going to sell another kind of product. An interesting example, actually, like corner stores are actually a fantastic example of this because if, their business really differs block to block. Because if their business has like, let's say, the surrounding 5-block area, I mean, they're not really going to draw a lot of people from a larger radius. So if people who live there are mostly like yuppies, right? If on one side people who live there are yuppies, but if you go the other way, people who live there are like poorer kind of people, the kinds of products are entirely different, right? So the yuppies, they buy like lentil chips for $5, right? And the margin on that is huge. But you would not get people from poorer neighborhoods buying those products. They would be buying like more. Typically, they buy like cigarettes and beer, right? And this is more like, this is not like a judgment of mine. This is more like industry research. And so of course you would, the kinds of products and the kinds of margin are incredibly different, just block to block for these kinds of stores. So it's sometimes possible to get industry research, but it's sometimes you have to really just get a feel for the neighborhood. And what really helps is what we alluded to before, is that having a mentor. So let's say if you're planning a corner store by yourself, it's really different than if you're planning a corner store with a person who has successfully built a corner store before. They will tell you exactly from block to block what you can expect, what your margins will be, what your foot traffic will be like, and what kind of products you have to sell, what kind of profits you will make. They'll be able to predict it, right, very closely. Whereas if you're just first time, you have no clue, no frame of reference. And that's really where part of the mentoring is like so valuable.
All right, thank you, Alex. Now, moving on to the marketing plan, which is the next important component in a business plan. How should a small business owner draft the right marketing plan for their business?
Right. This is another one of my very, very favorite parts of the business plan, and this is where also very many people make huge mistakes. And the marketing plan is actually a big part of the business plan because it's probably, pound for pound, it's one of the more important things. Because what happens is usually when a person starts a business, they may have some expertise in that business, but it's not often that they also have expertise in marketing. So they kind of either gloss over that, or they decide to hire and outsource that. Or basically what I read a lot is, especially on my mobile apps, my business planning mobile apps, people say, like almost 80% of the people say exactly the same thing. They say, I'm going to promote my business with Facebook, Twitter, business cards, and flyers. Some variation of this statement is made by almost everyone, like 80% of the people. And it's of course not enough. It's not a professional strategy because every business has to have a unique marketing plan or strategy that's going to take advantage of everything that business has to offer, right? Its differentiation, the kind of products it has, right? So what I did for my business, and that's really honestly what helped me grow, is I had to learn marketing, right? Because I started out as a software engineer and I knew absolutely nothing. But this is years ago. But I realized early on, the life of my business is going to depend on how well I'm going to be able to get traffic to it. So I had to learn it, and that's my recommendation for people is to kind of spend some time, even if it's not their favorite, maybe they rather spend time perfecting their craft or growing, focusing on the part of the business that has their expertise. But the marketing is really the lifeline of the business. And the marketing plan is kind of again, you need somebody professional guiding you, or you should sort of have enough experience to understand how you're going to take care of, are you going to do offline marketing? Are you going to do online marketing? Which components of those are going to be effective for the kind of business that you have? And these are the things that need to be identified in the marketing plan section of your business plan. And as you should go in some detail because it's really for you. Because if you just gloss over it and you'll just say, oh, I'll do Facebook marketing, right? Any business can really say that. But it's just not enough. And the problem that people encounter, and I see this all the time, they skip that part because, especially if they're not familiar with marketing, they kind of skip that part, and they just kind of, go forward. And then that part just ends up biting them in the very beginning because once they started their business, guess what? The biggest problem is no customers, right? And then they have to come back to that part of the business. And then the problem becomes, does your business model, does it support a lot of marketing strategies, right? Because some products, when you plan them, they lend themselves to some marketing strategies. And if you don't plan ahead, if you plan the product and then it ends up being that this product is hard to sell or this product is hard to promote or that few marketing avenues make sense for the kind of product you have, then, oh my God, you've built a product that's going to be hard to promote. And you just spent months and months of your time and a lot of money, and then you have a super uphill battle with marketing. And this could have been really solved or addressed on day one if you did proper business planning, right? Kind of like we talked about at the very beginning. And I see this a lot with mobile apps, because a lot of young people especially, they think like, I'm going to make the next cool game. And they either outsource and they spend a lot of money, or they spend months of their own time and they make their game. And the hardest part of the game is to get downloads in that, because it's just incredibly, that particular marketing environment is just incredibly competitive. And for them to promote a game, it's just almost impossible, because they're competing against so many established million-dollar companies that there's almost nothing they can do at that point. If they didn't really plan for it, or so it's something that I would suggest people do take very, very seriously. Do not skip. Get especially mentoring for this, and make sure don't skip over this. This is like one of the things most dangerous if you skip it.
Thanks, Alex. So marketing, yes, definitely a super important component of business planning, but almost equally important is the money, which is sort of a byproduct of marketing, right? So how does a small business owner determine what revenue model is right for their business?
And by the way, think back to when we talked about business modeling, right? The three components that I suggested are the product, the marketing, and the finances, right? So now we're getting to the finances of it. So you see, it's really the three main things: creating a good product, creating a good marketing strategy, and then figuring out how to make money from this thing. If all these things come together, the rest is just details, almost, right? So for monetization, for different businesses, the monetization is very different, of course. There are some standard revenue models. For small businesses, it's often transactional. Like if a small local business, you go to the restaurant, you get food, you pay, you go home. You go to a flower store, you get products, you pay, you go home, right? So it's really just easy. There's products. Online, it's different, because the first thing people can think about, and is like, okay, I have a website, how do I make money? Ads, right? So there's an ad revenue model where you publish ads on anything. It's a very difficult one, because on average for a new business, they will earn about, online, they will earn about $5 for 1,000 page views, approximately, which is really not enough, because to make $5,000, you need 1 million page views a month, right? So that's only available to some businesses. So you notice like news websites, social media websites, high traffic websites, they have ads. For most businesses, it's like not enough, the ad revenue model. So the transactional model, where you just sell products or services, that's great. And if you don't have your own products, there's the affiliate marketing strategy. Starts to make sense, where, let's say, like even if in my business I have some products that I offer, but I don't offer every product in the world that my customers might need at some point. So when I don't offer some products, there's the affiliate marketing strategy that I use, which is reselling other people's products or services and just get a commission. And that sometimes can be a business model in itself, because that takes away all the concerns of having a product. All you have to focus on is the marketing. And of course, on top of these strategies, there's a whole lot of little things you can do to extend the amount of money people spend with you. So for example, there's a catalog strategy, where if you have multiple products, I use this all the time. If you have multiple products, you can line them up, right? Like in a store, you have like a yogurt. Let's say you have a type of yogurt, right? You go shopping, you get a yogurt. And there's blueberry yogurt, and then there's like strawberry yogurt and cherry yogurt and plain yogurt. And people they look at it and they go like, wow, I want that, and that. So they came for to get one yogurt, but they left with like 5 of them. So sometimes, and that's kind of like a catalog business model, where revenue model, where it's like, you have few offerings, and then they look enticing next to each other, and people, instead they come for one, but they end up getting more than one, and it's really good, because one person can end up spending double or triple the amount of money. That's something that works. Another strategy that works to extend the lifetime of a customer is, of course, product quality always extends the lifetime of a customer because people like it, they come back. But some products are made, and again, this could be in the business planning process, some products are made in a way that will get people to buy them again. Or if it's like if you think like of a magazine subscription, subscriptions are like almost the panacea because people subscribe once, they buy once, and then it's like they almost have to unsubscribe. They have to do work to stop paying, right? So it's actually hard for them to stop paying. They don't have time, and the subscription just keeps going and going and going, almost like a gym membership, right? One person signs up and they think like they're going to go to the gym forever, and they go for the gym 1 month and they stop going, but the membership keeps going and they're getting billed every month, and that person's like, oh yeah, I'm going to keep doing this, but then they never go back, and then the gym member, the gym owner is happy because they just made like many, many months of revenue from this one person. So subscriptions are a great way to increase sales. The catalog model is a great way to increase sales thousands of percent. Things like that, they all work to maximize revenue. And what a business owner really should do is always work on maximizing revenue from existing customers, because new business owners, they tend to focus on finding new customers. But in very many cases, it's actually easier if you please your customers to make more money from existing customers than finding new customers. So there should be a lot of focus on customer support. Product quality always has to be improving. Things like that will actually help you get more money from your existing customers and just give you a larger customer value. At some point, when you achieve a large enough customer value, it will actually help you open up new marketing opportunities that have a cost to them, and they will begin to make financial sense because your per customer revenue will become big enough. So that's kind of what I have to say about revenue and ways to get revenue and ways to increase revenue, and just sort of the outlook on it.
Thanks, Alex. So let's move on to finances now. How do you address them in a business plan?
So, if you have an established business, you'll have with a lot of money going in, going out. I mean, it's kind of like your accountant should sort of like work with you on that. But for people who are just starting out or the business is small, you can do this. You can sort of just figure out the finance section of your business plan on your own. And what I recommend is creating a cash flow statement. And that sounds like a complicated term, but it's really not. It's really just a fancy list. And so you make a list of things where your cash comes in, places where you get revenue, and you make a list of things where cash comes out. That's all it is. The only difference is, before you start, it will be completely different than after you start, right? Before you start, let's say you're opening a restaurant, you have a ton of expenses, no revenue. After so the expenses are all different. They're like remodeling costs, legal fees, whatever the costs are. After you start, the costs are totally different. They're more about rent and employees, and everything else should be minor. And of course the ingredients. And then you have the revenue, right? So as you're small, you can sort of just handle this with a cash flow statement. I think is enough for most businesses. And as your business grows, really, I think this is something that you do outsource to an accountant, because you don't want to be making those mistakes, and you want to have your finances organized so that your taxes are also organized and you don't get any kind of trouble or make any mistakes, things like that.
All right, thanks, Alex. So I want to talk a little bit more about taxes right now. When dealing with finances, a critical aspect to consider early on is compliance, making sure your business is set up to succeed by complying with state and local tax laws. Most businesses have sales tax obligations, whether they sell directly to consumers or operate a service-based business. Collecting and remitting sales tax is a legal obligation, placed on businesses by the states in which they do business. Keeping up with these obligations can be time-consuming and complex, and it's easy to miscalculate rates, apply the wrong tax code, or get behind on filing returns. To avoid these headaches, many businesses are now turning to automated sales tax management solutions to effectively outsource the process. One such solution is Avalara AvTax. It plugs into accounting ERP and e-commerce platforms and automatically applies the right rates and rules to every transaction. It feeds information into Avalara Returns, which is a solution that incorporates simple payments, guaranteed on-time filing, audit support, and notice management. Be sure to factor this and other related accounting expenses that Alex talked about into your business plan from the get-go to avoid unexpected surprises. Now, the next part, Alex, is unit economics overview. It seems like it could get a bit complex. Can you break it down for us?
Yeah, it sounds like another complex term, but it's another thing that it's a simple concept. It's really looking at the unit costs and revenues, right? So let's say you sell some widget, and you have to take like a close view at what it takes you to produce that widget, you know, the resources, the shipping, you know, like the manufacturing, whatever you need to outsource, the marketing, and then the revenue that you get from that widget, right? So it's kind of like understanding all the components that go into having a single transaction, right? From having no product to manufacturing it, to marketing it, to delivering it to the customer. And it's just really taking a kind of microscopic look at what goes on there. And once you have a deep understanding of what goes on in every single transaction, you can see where things can be improved. And that's really the tool, to see like where things can be improved, right? So let's say the manufacturing is too costly, right? Then you have to look for ways to reduce costs. Or maybe it's impossible. So is there a way to raise the price so that it can cover you know, the total expense? So it's just a tool to really, as a business owner, to make sure that you really deeply understand what goes into every transaction, and then be able to improve whatever needs to be improved in your business processes.
All right, let's move on to the next step, which is outlining your current team. Alex, what's important to capture in this section?
So this is a pretty easy part of the business plan to write. If you have somebody read this is more like for a formal plan that you're going to give to somebody to read, and really you just want to show that, you know, are you the only person starting this business? Do you have business partners? Do you have advisors? If you have partners and advisors, you want to, and also for yourself, you want to show that you have deep expertise in this business. Like, so for example, if your team is built of people who have like 10 years experience in the industry, have measurable successes, then it reads in a very good way. But if your business, the team section reads like, it's me with a friend, we have no experience in this industry, we have no advisors, then it reads in a very different way. So you just want to establish credibility that you know the industry, you have experience, your team knows the industry, your team has experience in the industry, and that you guys are, you know, just have that credibility. So that's what really it's for.
Got it. So let's move on to number 11, which is your competition. What is it important to know about your competition?
So every business, when they first start, they have a plan of why they will be the best, right? And sometimes they write like, we are the best because of this. But they're not the best, right? Because usually the competition is the best because they're at least alive and existing and in business. So what's important in this section is to show that you do have a good sense of who your competitors are, what the industry environment is like, and then outline not how you are better, because you know on day one you're not better, but how you plan to be different. So one of your competitors might be specializing in, this, delivering that. Another competitor might be specializing in delivering something else really well. But there may be some holes in this market that aren't covered. There may be some customers that are left unhappy. And what you have to show is that you understand the market, you understand where the consumers can have a better experience, and how you can be better by providing, how you can be different by providing, that particular thing. And that's how you're going to be carving out your initial niche, like your beachhead within the market, which of course you will be successful with that. And once you are, you can move on to bigger and, expand your reach in the market. But it's really, one of the things when people first start to write a business plan, they kind of skip this. They skip the rigor of learning about the competitors. And so if a potential investor reads that and they see like no competitors, then they know that the entrepreneur didn't do their homework, right? Because of course every business will have competitors. If there's no competitors, there's no industry. And if there's no industry, that's a whole different conversation. So it's really just to, if it's a formal business plan, it's really just to show that you understand the business landscape, who your competitors are, and what the opportunity within that market is that the competitors aren't covering and that you will cover.
All right, thank you, Alex. So let's move on to number 12 now. Why is it important to cover how your company has been funded to date if you're writing a business plan for a company that's already in business?
Right. So if you're showing this to an investor, they just want to see, are they the first investor in? Who else has put money? Are they going to be kind of, there's a big difference for them if they're the first investor in, or if there's already existing investors and they have to figure out, how those guys play into the picture. So this is just something that is just very common, and it's kind of a part, of your, the finances section. And by the way, some of these things like the cash flow statement, the sensitive information, you can actually there's a way for some people, if you want to show this information to some people like investors or banks, it should be in the business plan. But if you're just showing it to regular people that they don't necessarily need to see your financial information, you can actually put all these kinds of things into the appendix of a business plan, which you can easily take in and out of the actual document. And for that reason, it's actually sometimes this information is good to put into the appendix, because like few people actually should see this information other than like people who invest or whatever. But yeah, it's just one of those things, frame of reference. People want to know, are they the first investor in? And sometimes it's a good idea for them to see, like, if you had a big investment, what did you do with that money? How did you manage it? Because however you manage that money, probably you'll manage their money the same way. So that's why that's important.
We've got a little bit of time to briefly have you touch on the last two components, Alex, which is to include a section about what you are looking for, and then also, like you already referenced, the appendix.
Yeah, the what you're looking for section is very optional, and it's basically like you just made somebody read your whole business plan. Why? Like, are you looking for them to be a partner? Are you looking for them to invest? Are you looking for them to give you a loan? What is it that you need? It's just, they're there, they got to the end. Now tell them exactly what you're looking for so that they know if they can help you with it. So it's a very optional thing. Often you will get that part in the conversation. They'll know what you need, but you might as well have it at the end.
All right, great. Now we're going to open up the Q&A portion of the webinar. We hope to get to all of your questions, but if we don't during the event, we will try our best to respond afterward via our thread on the Manta community, which is linked under attachments. Also, Alex is offering webinar attendees special access to his Udemy course on business planning. To take advantage of the offer, click on the link under the attachments tab. So now, Alex, for some questions from the audience. One question I have here is the challenges I'm facing is the brainstorming stage of a business plan. Where should I start and where should I stop?
I think you want to find the right people with whom you have chemistry for brainstorming. The easiest people that you have access to are friends and family. The problem with that is that they don't always know the actual business of what you're trying to brainstorm. So the next best thing is to look for industry peers. So this can be also people who are starting similar businesses, right? And the next people you want to look into are industry leaders and experts. So one tip that I have is if and you want to talk to everybody, and you want to talk to potential customers as well, because talking to everybody will give you the clearest, most well-rounded picture of of all the opinions and all the potential problems and potential benefits of your business. But one thing that if you're struggling to find the people to discuss this stuff with, like Facebook groups, in the last 2 years, they've become sort of like the LinkedIn for a lot of businesses. And you can find Facebook groups with large communities of people who probably are in similar business to yours. And there are peers to you there, as well as real experts. So I would recommend kind of going to Facebook, looking for relevant groups. And you can do this on LinkedIn as well, but I think those LinkedIn groups are a little bit less engaged. And you just post your questions, start conversations, ask questions, and I think you'll find that a lot of people will be very willing to spend time brainstorming with you, giving you advice and suggestions. Even people who are like real experts in this industry might even respond. And really, other than that, it will be extremely hard to get their time. And here, often they're very, because it's a community, they give their time for free, and it can be really helpful. I personally use this strategy all the time.
Thanks, Alex. Someone is asking, is there a book you recommend to build this business plan, a book that is not too overwhelming, but is comprehensive of all the components?
I actually have written a business plan book. It's made to be sort of easy, and I talk about the kind of basic components of a plan and how to create an entire strategy of it. So you can just search Amazon for my name and business plan. I don't know of another business planning book. If I had to think about it, there is the concept of the business model canvas. That's really a popular concept recently in the last few years, and that might also help you. So it's like the business model canvas, but it's actually, and people ask me about it a lot, and I try to teach people from it, but in my opinion, it's actually more complicated. Today it's the most popular thing, that business model canvas. It's popular to simplify things, but in my opinion, it's actually too theoretical and it's still complex. So I try to even narrow it down and simplify it further. So not sure of any great books out there, but mine does try to simplify it.
Yeah, and I really love that about your book, Alex. I read it to put together this presentation, and it was super straightforward and accessible. It made me feel like, wow, I could do this if I wanted to, which, is definitely appreciated. Someone's asking how they get in touch with you. Do you have, what's the best way for someone to reach out to you?
So I always love hearing from people. My email is my first name dot my last name, and the problem is my last name is very long. It's alex.genedinik@gmail.com. So maybe people can just look on the notes for this webinar, and then you can put the email there. And then also my Twitter is @my last name, which is impossible to spell, so I'm just going to skip that. But if people just find my email online, or better go to the notes for the webinar, and I'm sure they'll see my email there and everything else, my contact information.
All right, Alex, I'm going to ask you a couple more questions from the audience. If you want to start a business out of your home, is this a good way to start, or should you rent outside space?
I recommend hustle. So out of your home is great because, your costs are low, right? Right away, you have this. One of the biggest costs of businesses is the rent, right? and you want to have low cost so you can have more money if you have money to put into your marketing and to put into your product quality. That's where I recommend that money would go. I mean, sometimes having an office is part of a quality, if for some businesses, but few businesses. I would say start small and start limber and experiment and try to find at least some kind of growth, some kind of a product traction. And as you start growing, then start thinking about what is the office space really necessary. It would be helpful to know what kind of business this is, so that I know if that business needs an office. But unless you're serving clients directly, I would think that you would want to put your resources like money into the marketing and into product quality.
Thanks, Alex. Here's another question for you. With regard to your competition, what if you are a nonprofit providing a service? How will you include this in your business plan?
If you're a nonprofit,
providing a service.
It's hard to answer because there's not enough on this question to answer well, because you still have to outcompete your competitors, right? You still have to get the attention of your potential target market. You still have to do everything else, no matter if you're a for-profit or a nonprofit. In fact, nonprofits have some marketing strategies available to them that for-profits don't have. Like I think Google gives nonprofits some free ads, things like that. But in terms of competition, I'm gonna assume that you mean how to outcompete your competition, and that's really the marketing strategies. For the most part, you're just gonna have to do the same marketing strategies but better. I don't know if that was a full answer, but.
Well, I think in the absence of time, Alex, we'll move on with one more question. What are sources of industry research numbers? Are there any public databases you recommend, or other methods of getting industry research data compiled for your business plan?
Yeah, like Hoover's is like a big known industry research kind of a place. But for most businesses, again, it depends. Sometimes if you're a local business, it's too difficult. Like let's say you're opening a gym. I mean, that gym, there's no research because it's only like a difference in a five block difference where that gym is will make the difference. Does it have passerby traffic or not? That would make a huge difference, right? Like in terms of foot traffic. Are you going to have a big storefront? Industry research can't really predict a lot for local businesses. There's they can talk about large trends, large industries, so they can tell you about how the gym industry is doing overall. But it's not really going to help you when you have to figure out if you should open a gym in some city, some neighborhood, or even some city block, right? Because you're going to have only some limited number of open real estate spots where you can even open that. So there's really a limit to what you can get, and it's a per business sort of thing. You can get a lot of large research, about how big is this market, how big is that market. But when you're starting out, they're all huge markets, and it's not, that information is not that relevant. I think in terms of research, experience is one of the better things. Like have someone on your team with real experience in this industry, and they will be able to tell this product might do well here. This industry is growing. This is how growth happens in this industry, and this really happens. This is something that experience brings more than particular research. And sometimes you can hire research firms to do research on your specific thing, on your specific the kind of business you want to start, but that actually gets into, it's pretty expensive for them to go specifically do research on whatever you want them to research, and their off-the-shelf stuff is too broad usually. So it's a balancing act. You have to understand the larger industry, but you also, for your little business that you're starting, wherever it is, it's more about experience and industry savvy that's already on your team, kind of.
All right, well, thank you, Alex, so much. We've got to wrap it up now, folks. But if your question wasn't answered, head over to the Manta community to get your question answered by Alex. Just visit community.manta.com and click on the Ask the Expert banner, which is shown here on this slide, to pose your question anytime within the next hour, and Alex will answer you there. Thanks, Alex, for presenting today, and Avalara for sponsoring this event. Be sure to sign up for our next webcast on how to turn your stories into profit on March 8th. We hope you'll join us then. Thanks for attending today.